I feel that Kyrie Irving ruined the franchise. I feel that all of this is his doing. Kyrie Irving had shown up to work. If he had been a more consistent presence, then he'd still be in Brooklyn. KD would still want to be in Brooklyn. They probably might have won a championship.
A lot has transpired since the last time we made a video on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And even before I get to all that, you might be looking at my video and saying, Mike, what happened to your setup? Where's the Kobe Bryant, McAfee, and Patrick Mahomes jersey? I'm currently on vacation. It's my best friend's bachelor party, and I want to give a shout out to all the nice individuals that decided to take a hit on their sleeping accommodations just so I could have the opportunity to bring you guys this update. I also apologize for the glitchy camera. I really tried my best to fix it, but this is what I could do. So in this video, I'm going to give you an update on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Where are they the most likely to go to? What teams have dropped out of the race for them, and what are the contingency plans for those teams? Before we get to the content, it was really difficult to put myself in this situation to record these updates for you guys. So if you could take a moment to leave a like, consider subscribing and turning on our notifications to help the channel grow, because no one will work harder to bring you guys the latest NBA news and drama than me. In addition to that, if you like shorter versions of my content, we upload 1-minute shorts onto my Instagram page and onto my TikTok page as well at TheFlightMike. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Since the last time I brought you guys a video on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, or when Kevin Durant officially demanded a trade from the Brooklyn Nets, a lot has transpired. As a matter of fact, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving addressed the media for the very first time since Kevin Durant did officially demand a trade and Kyrie Irving opted into his contract, but it wasn't necessarily a press conference. It was via Twitter. The very first thing is Kyrie Irving, in very Kyrie Irving fashion, tweeted out this GIF of a bird leaving a cage and flying away. So I don't think you necessarily need to be some sort of philosophy major to understand what Kyrie Irving is saying. He's saying that the cage bird is finally free, which kind of drives me crazy, man, because if you look at Kyrie Irving's entire career, hasn't he always been saying that he's been caged up somewhere and he's finally free? I mean, when he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was caged as LeBron James's sidekick. He gets traded to the Boston Celtics and he's free. With the Boston Celtics, I don't really know why he didn't like Boston, so if someone here knows, you could tell me, but when he left the Boston Celtics and joined the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant, his best friend, he finally felt like he was free. And once again, Kyrie Irving feels like he has been freed. But if you think that's interesting, wait until you see how Kevin Durant went about this. I don't know if you guys heard, but Frank Isola, another insider, absolutely eviscerated Kevin Durant, calling him a horrific leader and saying that he would rather respond to people on Twitter than lead his own team.
He doesn't believe the teammates that he has are good enough to win. He doesn't want to, deep down, doesn't want to be the leader. He wants to go to a ready-made team and he can just play basketball. That's what he wants to do. He couldn't be a leader in Brooklyn because he knows, like a real leader like LeBron would have to challenge Kyrie Irving on a lot of stuff. And that's not his personality. Kevin Durant would rather challenge anonymous people on Twitter. He doesn't have the appetite or the energy to deal with a guy like Kyrie Irving. And I think he knows that. And he's saying, you know what? I got to go to a drama-free type of team.
Which is kind of ironic because literally one day later, you see Kevin Durant going on Twitter and, well, addressing the situation. Kevin Durant tweeted out that the ones who were locked in that gym with me know what it is. They know what I'm about. If you haven't been in there with me, ask around. Which, like, look, man, I personally never had any doubts or any questions about Kevin Durant's commitment to the game. I feel like the way he goes about his business sometimes is a little questionable, but there's no question in my mind in regards to Kevin Durant's love, passion, and commitment to the game and his desire to be great. So I understand why he would demand a trade and request the top seeds in each conference as his top 2 teams on his wish list. In typical Kevin Durant fashion, he decided to address someone that was criticizing him. And to be honest, I want to give a shout out to the critic, because this is exactly what I was thinking as I read the tweet. This is vague and doesn't address anything directly. We all know you are an awesome basketball player. Like I said, there's no one questioning the greatness of Kevin Durant. But here's the best part. Thankfully, Kevin Durant responded to this. What do you want addressed? And a huge shout out to Robert Lundberg, man, because the questions he asked are literally the questions on everyone's mind. Robin Lundberg, excuse me, I said Robert, but it's Robin, said, do you really want a trade from the Nets? If so, why? Was Kyrie a deal breaker for you? If you do want a trade, do you expect to pick your destination? And here's the frustrating thing about the way Kevin Durant handles media, at least in my opinion. His response was kind of irritating. He responded saying, keep dreaming, Robin, LMAO. Now, Robin responds saying, okie dokie, not sure why you asked what I wanted addressed then, but I'll now print out this Twitter interaction and hang it on my wall and dream of someone bringing a championship to the Nets. So look, obviously I have realistic expectations. I know there was very little to no chance of Kevin Durant being transparent about what's going on behind the scenes. My interpretation has always been the fact that he wants to stay in Brooklyn. He wanted Kyrie Irving to get a contract extension. The Brooklyn Nets didn't want to give Kyrie Irving a contract extension because, bro, Kyrie and KD played less games together than Kyrie Irving played with Anthony Bennett and Luke Walton. I mean, they literally only played 44 games together. It's really difficult to look at that core and say, yeah, we're going to give you guys max contract extensions. I 100% understand. Well, I mean, they already gave Kevin Durant one, but in Kyrie Irving's case, I definitely understand where the Brooklyn Nets are coming from. On the other hand, I think the Brooklyn Nets are absolutely idiotic in this case because out of nowhere, why have you just decided randomly that, hey, we punted on a beautiful culture with Kenny Atkinson and D'Angelo Russell and Jarrett Allen and Spencer Dinwiddie, and things were really looking up for us for a team that really had no hope. They had no first round draft picks during that era, but they had a culture, they had an identity, and Brooklyn Nets fans loved watching them. All of a sudden, you punt on that core, you fire Kenny Atkinson, you bring in KD and Kyrie, and obviously not in that order, you give up your entire future for James Harden, and now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, culture over everything. I think it's absolutely idiotic the way they went about it. I can understand the Kyrie and KD era being very frustrating. I feel like both sides are to blame is what I'm trying to say here. Now, Minnesota actually made a trade offer for Kevin Durant before they traded for Rudy Gobert. And this is where I also think that the Brooklyn Nets are a little idiotic in regards to Kevin Durant's trade value. Look, nothing against Kevin Durant, transcendent player, first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion, one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, but he's 34 and he's coming off of an Achilles tear. This is not prime Kevin Durant. Yeah, post-prime Kevin Durant is still remarkable, but for some reason, the Brooklyn Nets think that Kevin Durant is worth an Anthony Davis-like trade package. Now, I know someone in the comment section is going to take my words and twist them up and get it mixed up. So I wanted to start this off by saying, no, I don't think Anthony Davis is a better player than Kevin Durant. But at the time that Anthony Davis was traded for, he was a significantly more valuable player than Kevin Durant is now, because Kevin Durant is 34, coming off of an Achilles tear, and Anthony Davis was in his 20s with his prime clearly ahead of him when the Lakers traded for him. So I think it's fairly unrealistic to expect this type of haul, and apparently the Minnesota Timberwolves, according to John Krasinski of The Athletic, were in talks about Miles Turner and Clint Capella as backup rim protector options as the Gobert trade was in jeopardy. They also placed calls to Brooklyn, but the asking price proved to be too big. Minnesota was unwilling to part with Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns. The Nets were asking for established all-stars and a mountain of picks. Minnesota was unwilling to part with either Edwards or Towns in a KD center deal, so there was no traction. The frustrating part about this is, man, if the Brooklyn Nets got the exact same haul as the Utah Jazz did for Rudy Gobert, I would have said they were huge winners in this instance. I mean, it was a great way to start their rebuild. You don't know how good Minnesota is going to be. How do you know that they're not going to make the same mistake that Brooklyn did last year? How do you know that their team's not going to crumble completely? That's the strategy of asking for picks that far down the line. So apparently they wanted Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns. But now when you consider the fact that Rudy Gobert was traded for what he was traded for, which is a remarkable return if you're a Utah Jazz fan, and I really hope it works out for the Minnesota Timberwolves, the asking price remains high for Kevin Durant and is expected to go up following the boatload of draft picks the Timberwolves gave up to acquire Rudy Gobert. So I am starting to think to myself that there's a chance that Kevin Durant doesn't get traded. I mean, I think the Brooklyn Nets are overvaluing him at this point, which means things could get a little ugly. Bear bear in mind, Kevin Durant needs to be traded first before Kyrie Irving gets traded, primarily due to salary cap gymnastics, for lack of a better way of explaining it. Now, we have Jack Settleman, which I'm going to be honest, never heard of this guy in my life, but he posted this, so do with it what you will. You can take it with a grain of salt. He tweeted, Kevin Durant update. Market for KD has shrunk. Non-contenders are not willing to leverage their future for Durant. Limited amount of contenders who have the pieces to acquire Durant. Philly offer still on the table. Next 48 hours will determine a lot, and there's a chance he stays in Brooklyn. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the only teams that have the assets to acquire KD in a move that would make sense for both the contenders and obviously the Brooklyn Nets, I don't think the Phoenix Suns are still in, because it seems like the Nets want Devin Booker. The Phoenix Suns aren't giving up Devin Booker. It seems like the Brooklyn Nets don't want DeAndre Ayton, so that means you probably need another team involved in this trade in order to make DeAndre Ayton work. You could cross off the Los Angeles Lakers. I personally thought it was really funny the moment that you saw Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving potentially being bundled together to be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. All of a sudden, Anthony Davis, who hasn't picked up a basketball in 2.5 months, decided to log off of Twitch and get a workout in with Lethal Shooter, which is a shooting coach. In my opinion, the only two teams that have the assets to trade for Kevin Durant at this point is one, the Miami Heat. They could match salary using Duncan Robinson. You could throw in Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, which I'm assuming the Miami Heat would be cool with adding in Tyler Hero, because eventually he's going to have to get paid max contract money, and he's currently coming off the bench. So we don't know if he's even a starter next year for the Miami Heat. And if there's a team that can pull off a trade without including like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and some of their core players, it would be the Miami Heat. Those are the top two teams that I think could trade for KD right now. In regards to Kyrie, we just have to wait to see what happens with KD before he tries to force a trade to the Lakers. But also bear in mind that the Brooklyn Nets owe Kyrie Irving no favors at all whatsoever. They don't need to trade him to the Lakers just to do him a favor. It's not like Kyrie has a no trade clause. So as the day went on, we got a huge update from one of my favorite insiders in the game, Chris B. Haynes of Yahoo Sports. And he said the Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets are actively engaged in a Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook trade conversation. So the official report goes like this: the Los Angeles Lakers and Brooklyn Nets are actively engaged in discussions on a trade package that would send star point guard Russell Westbrook to Brooklyn in exchange for star point guard Kyrie Irving, league sources tell Yahoo Sports. There's palpable optimism that an agreement can be struck between the two sides of this offseason, but there's a couple of hurdles, sources say. One is draft compensation is an ongoing talking point for the Nets, and they want shooting guard Joe Harris, who is currently recovering from a left ankle surgery and is remaining $38.6 million owed over the next 2 years, included in the deal, sources say. Now that's what the Brooklyn Nets want. The Los Angeles Lakers don't want Joe Harris in this deal. They would much rather get Seth Curry in this deal, because Seth Curry is on an expiring $8.5 million contract. So according to the Nets, discussions have only been preliminary at this point, sources say, but the Nets are not expected to be rushed into a deal and will continue conversing the complex specifics with the Lakers on an Irving Westbrook swap. Brooklyn is also listening to proposals from nearly half of the league attempting to make a play on Kevin Durant, who requested a trade at the start of free agency. I'm sticking to my guns on this one. I could be wrong, guys, but I personally think a Kyrie Irving trade is not going to happen until Kevin Durant gets traded. But if it does happen, I'll make sure to bring you guys the news ASAP. So make sure you subscribe and you have my notifications on just in case the trade happens. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.